Bye-bye. That's right. See you in the next one.
Eleanor wants to debate too.
Yeah, she was almost say goodbye. She's been waiting for me to round out. She knows the routine, so she knows when I'm ending the show. So she's all excited now because she'll get a bit of attention. Yeah, I'm gonna put
But we
myself
have
on
to
it.
keep the burden of proof on them. Once we take up a model, then we're taking a position and we have to explain our position. Avoid that. Don't need it. Let them prove their position.
Just for our benefit. Just so they can understand and stop asking ridiculous questions about the sun. Nobody can measure it. That's the point I was trying to make.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the same time, we can't really stop the entire flat Earth community from trying to speculate and try to build their own models on how it is supposedly working.
Yeah, some of them do
And that is part
damage.
of the problem, because
Yeah,
the people that are
right.
just fooling around with that,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are going to be pointed at by the Globers, like, oh yeah, look, this is what you all believe.
Yeah, that's what they say. Is it you believe this? No, no, I don't. Just keep the burden of proof on them. Never take a position or a model. Just it's observably flat, and we don't feel movement. That's the only two things we need to stick to. Or that's my position anyway.
No, physically, but there's more details that are very much worked out.
Yeah, but just keep those to yourself. Like put the burden of proof
No,
on
I'm
them.
not going to keep that to myself.
No,
The
okay,
angular relations of the positions of the heavenly bodies and their pathway are extremely well defined and consistent. So that is a given. Doesn't mean that we know what they are. Just as downward acceleration force seems to be there, it doesn't mean that we know what causes it. So, but that doesn't mean that it's not there.
I wouldn't mention that though. Keep the burden of
will,
proof on them
absolutely,
all
every
the
single time.
Never take a position, and therefore you don't have to explain anything. Just push it back on them.
No, I will definitely take a position where I
okay.
know that I'm right. And then just leave it open. And yeah, if they think they're smarter for having an explanation that's wrong, and me describing something that I do not have an explanation for, then that's their problem. That's also a psychological mechanism we should be getting out of the way, because it is a mistake. It is a mistake to only accept something if there is a causal relation tied into it. That doesn't make it true. But the only thing that makes it true if it is persistent, if it is repeatable. And then the cause is yet to be found. That is awesome.
I was yesterday talking flattered with a coworker of mine, a young guy. I've been talking to him since I got into this almost 2 years ago, and it was so interesting. And he's so feisty and so denial of everything I say, you know. And he is right because the Earth is a spinning ball, you know. Period. Gravity is true, and that's true. And I came, an idea came to me to a kind of activism, and I asked him, "Are you willing to be recorded on a video?" He said, "I don't want to show my face." I said, "What if I just record my face or just the audio, and make just general questions to you, kind of an interview, ask you questions about your understanding of Earth, how it works, you know, what do you know, how do you know it?" He said, "I think I'm all right with that." He said, "Ah, but you're gonna ridicule me or whatever." I said, "No, I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions. You give me your honest answer, and then if you want to ask me questions back, then you ask me. You know, it's your turn." I think I'm gonna take that approach with strangers. I'm gonna ask, "Hey, can I record you?" And just ask you a bunch of questions, general questions about science and the Earth and the world. And I think it would be interesting because it's not going to be a debate. It's not going to be a one-sided. I just want to hear their point of view, and then just throw it out there to see what comes out of it. It will be interesting. I think will be to listen
Could
to.
be.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to this channel, or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below the video to join the discussion and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by the Plain Truth.
Honk honk.
On Honkers people, you're running off the road. Two-dimensional. What's your name? I can't see. Let's bring up the other list because it's easier to read. Two-dimensional discussion. Two-dimensional delusion. There we go. Who else? We got Spurs Chemo, Sleeping Warrior, Ranty Flat Earth, Mark Doxy, Jose, James, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Puerto Rico, la tierra es plana.
So, Arwin, I mean, just trying to bring it home, because we've got to talk about physics. A lot of physics teachers out there, a lot of people who do physics and physicists and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and what you're saying is that these things cannot be measured. So what you're saying is that a lot of these physicists are wasting their time. I think that needs to be, brought home to these physicists. And, you need to kind of explain it in a way so they can stop wasting their time and look at things where they can, it can be more beneficial.
I tried that. I tried that in high school, or whatever it's called there. I tried that 20 years ago, and...
Get down.
Sorry.
No, sorry, I was talking to my teachers climbing on the table.
No, but yeah, they're basically not allowed to do that. If teachers start to basically deviate from the official explanations, from the official materials, they will get into trouble for it. So, like in private, they might talk with somebody about stuff, but if they do that in the class, then yeah, they're gonna get into trouble for it. So it's just not allowed.
Well, I mean, what kind of things are they? They believe there's a belief system that they have. Because I speak to physicists, and they're very adamant about their position. That they're doing the tests. They're the leaders. Some of them are the leaders in the scientific community.
Mm-hmm.
If you're known as a physicist, you're the go-to guy. So I think they need an understanding.
Well, some of them don't understand it. Some of them are really heavily indoctrinated globeheads. Some of them are very vulnerable to the scientific consensus. They're very vulnerable to peer pressure of their peers.
Sorry,
but some physicists out there, they are really smart. They are really individual thinkers, critical thinkers, and they know what's going on. And they have to be very careful with how they express themselves.
Okay, so you were saying, in school you were speaking to the physicists, so they're teaching some things. So if you can kind of say some of the things that they're teaching that are false, then maybe other people can say, well, to their teacher also, you're teaching things that are not correct or, misunderstood. Like, how do you understand the physical world, compared to like the physics teacher who you're saying that they've got it wrong. They're not allowed to talk about truth, so to speak.
Well, they're constantly talking basically from a theoretical angle, and they're very well trained in it. And then eventually yeah, there's basically the theoretical talk where you pronounce the theory concept about it. It's more like the science philosophy angle of discussing things, and then eventually they just jump onto that one theory, the globe theory, and everything that sticks to that, and then people discuss that. And yeah, if you're going to then like openly demonstrate like, but there are things wrong about it, they will do what globers do and say, yeah, there may be some inconsistencies, but it's just because we haven't found an explanation for it yet. It's the same process. And yeah, if they are really honest, then they might say, yeah, well, there's other theories too, other explanations for it. But if they are caught in public doing that, or doing that in their class, they will get into big trouble for it. I've seen it happen. I'm not going to name names, but yeah.
I was there, man.
I tried one of my teachers, and he actually was very intrigued, and he went along. And then, yeah, the certain person that I know, that I'm not going to name either, he actually openly addressed him about it, said that he couldn't go there. Yeah.
Can we do some slightly more concise housekeeping? So I'll try and start, and hopefully you'll all chime in and we'll get through it in 2 minutes. But has there actually been any signs of curvature?
Well, yeah, this is what I was saying in the first part, is that they say at this height, there's the curvature. So how do you tell them that it's not curvature? If they say, look, you see curvature, I see curvature, what are we looking at?
Well, so, you answered it on the last show. So when you rotate the camera, if you get that line continuing, then you have a sphere, right? You've got a curved line that's carrying on, and it's part of the geography. Whereas if you turn the camera and the curve stays in the same place, then you're seeing an effect of the lens. So you can't then composite that particular image into a sphere because it's not a sphere. So when Lewis Hackett tried to composite that,
I agree. We can rule that out. Yes, I was bringing that up just in case the borders will say, look, we've shown, just to reiterate that they kind of think that that's curvature. So you're right, yeah, that rules that out. So yeah,
fair enough. It's worth a reminder. Check out Spurs on the last debate. But any signs of actual curvature? Anyone?
It hasn't been consistently documented or presented or scientifically.
Yeah, that's the one. Any signs of that?
No.
Anyone?
No.
No. Nope.
My bad. Okay. Axial rotation? Anybody got any signs of axial rotation?
No.
Nope.
Pressurized system next to a vacuum? Has anybody had any evidence of that demonstrated to them? Anybody?
Still waiting on public globers to come back and show us.
Nothing practical, no.
Nope.
What about R? Anybody found any evidence of the radius that they presuppose?
R. Nope.
No. Pirates are movie ratings only.
Self-perpetuating molten iron core that can sustain its own magnetic field?
Afraid not.
Sorry.
Not even in the small scale.
Oh, well, that's all a bit of a bummer, really. Okay, so that pretty much concludes the housekeeping. Brilliant stuff.
Well, you might want to look for R a little harder because it's on the move, apparently. Because if you don't use the 2 pi R formula to calculate for these values, and you use that miles per square, if you try to plot where R should be at the center of the Earth, it keeps moving on you. So R is on the move.
Gotta catch them all.
Are you talking square functions and straight curves?
You're squaring the variable here, and miles is a variable. And if you always try to point on your new angle down to the center, the R will move.
Yeah, it becomes spiral.
A square and curve. It has no choice. R is never in the same place anywhere on their globe with their math, with
Nah,
the
it is
miles per second square. The R is on the move.
Sorry to interrupt. Is the panel full right now?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
We need a placeholder to drop. Is the
I
link
can
public?
drop, no problem.
Link is public, but if Two Dimensional wants to drop, hopefully we can get Rich in.
Oh, there he goes.
There you go.
Oh, he's gone. And so just watch out for the next one to join. If it's not Drive, make sure that he gets kicked.
Mm-hmm.
Watch you don't get hit by a traveling R.
Yeah, watch out for that R. Hey, I tell you what, if the ballers ever did get a victory on that R, that would be an R win, wouldn't it?
An R win. That's brilliant.
R.
Don't remind
Hey, Rich.
people about it.
Good to have you.
Hello.
R win.
Morning, Rich.
Good morning.
Good morning,
How
sir.
are we?
I'm tired.
You've not even been to bed yet.
Nope. When this hit me, I couldn't go to sleep. What's that?
You have a Just So story for us about stars, right?
Yeah.
Go on.
I need a little help with the math. I'm too tired. I had it once and lost it.
Yeah.
There's a formula for calculating distance between two longitude points. And all the calculators online, they just use an average. No matter what two you put in, you get the same thing. But as you know, on a globe, they have the longitude points get closer and closer as you get to the poles, and they get wider as you get down towards the equator. There's some kind of formula where you take the cosine of the angle or the cosine of the degrees, and it gives you the right answer. Like, what's the distance between 1 degree at that latitude? So if somebody could look that up, at what longitude rather.
So what you're saying is, as you move up the ball from the equator, the distance between them changes. Therefore, there's a mathematical equation to adjust for it.
Yeah, it's like 69 miles between 1 degree at the equator, and it drops down to like 53 miles, I think, about where you all are in the UK. Something like that.
So that 69 miles and 1 degree of drop isn't accurate. It's only accurate for that one latitude at the equator.
That's correct. Now, longitude is correct no matter where you are because it's equidistant.
They say that a lot, but I hadn't even thought about it that way. The obviously 69 miles of movement, giving you 1 degree of star movement, would only ever work on a plane because it would have to be a variable on a sphere, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, see, that this is what they did. This is the Masonic trick. What they did was, this was all came down from the trolls, really. They kept saying, yeah, you want to prove you're on a ball? You're at 30 degrees north, go to 20 degrees north, and Polaris will drop 10 degrees. That's your proof. Well, of course, we know that's perspective, but then it dawned on me last night, unfortunately, while I was trying to sleep, that, hey, they fudged those numbers depending on where it is. So your distance that you move to drop 1 degree of Polaris changes, depends where you are on the Earth, which proves they did it for perspective. It's not a sphere because it would be like the latitude. I mean, latitude lines. It would be equidistant because the ball is supposed to be the same.
Oh,
Of course, but that can't be perspective.
So basically, to prove that, you would need a plane traveling due north all the way. I don't know how we'd prove that it would be wrong, right?
That can't have anything to do with perspective. It just means that the angular relations apparently are not consistent with the latitude position. Because otherwise, if it was perspective, then you would see things shifting into the distance.
This?
That's Arwin.
Okay. Can I finish saying what I was going to say?
Yeah, that's his trouble. He always does that.
Okay. If you freeze the Earth in a moment in time, and you have a star, let's say Regulus, let's just say it is, and it's 90 degrees above your head. You know, that time period has come where it rose in the east, and now you're wherever you are on the Earth, and it stops right overhead. Well, if you go 20 degrees further east, now if you freeze the Earth there, and you move, or you take an observer at that moment of time, 20 degrees further east, then the star will be 20 degrees off of due north, or due overhead. Does that make sense? Let me go west. That makes more sense. You go 20 degrees west from that point. Let's say in the UK, 0 degrees east, 0 degrees west. You're on the 0 line.
Yeah, they're all the same, right?
And you got a star, whatever star A. It's 90 degrees overhead. And you move 20 degrees into the Atlantic. Well, it'll drop 20 degrees to the horizon, correct?
Yeah.
But that isn't true north-south, because it depends on where you are. Well, let's put it this way. Let's say 20 degrees then is 1,200 miles. So you've moved 1,200 miles to get a 10-degree drop. And going north-south, that might work at the equator, but when you get up near the poles, you go like from 60 to 80 degrees. It's a different distance to get that 20-degree drop.
Yeah, and it has to be because it's a ball, right?
No.
It has to be the same.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not. See, what happens, see, you have Polaris that doesn't move. That was the key. So because what they've done is they fudge for perspective one way. The other way, they don't have to fudge because the stars are moving over us. You just have to wait for time to go by. But if you think about it as far as freezing time and then taking the same distance between the start point on either side, it'll, you know, like I said, let's say it's 1,200 miles and either side drops 10 degrees. That isn't true north-south with Polaris or any other star, because it depends. Well, it could be at the equator, but it depends on your how far up on the ball you are. Will it depend on the distance? So you might only go 1,100 miles and get the same 10-degree change depending on where your longitude line is. You follow?
Yeah.
So what they did was they corrected for actually perspective. It proves two things. One, in my mind anyway, I'm still working through this. Why is it different north-south on a ball versus east-west? It should be the exact same viewing the stars, but it's not. I've been in Stellarium most of the night looking at it. So what they've done is they don't have to account for perspective east-west because the stars move over us, okay? They move from the east to the west. And nobody ever thinks about it as far as freezing time and looking at 10 degrees north-south. We've always been focused on Polaris. But if you take the other into consideration, you have a difference. And that can't be on a ball. It's got to be the exact same.
But how would we prove it one way or the other? Because it would dawn on my mind that they couldn't prove that it did move 1 degree every 69 miles equally as much as we couldn't prove that it did or didn't. You know what I mean? How do we prove it one way or the other?
Well, here's the deal. You have to find the true distance between 2 points, north and south, at a certain degree. Now, I've taken all the screenshots of Stellarium to show where Polaris is. And sure enough, you drop 10 degrees from, let's say you're at 80 degrees north to 70 degrees north. You drop that 10 degrees, Polaris will drop 10 degrees. But let's just say that's 1,000 miles then. So 1,000 miles equals a 10-degree drop. But when you get down to the equator, let's say from 10 degrees to 0, it's not 1,000 miles anymore. Now it's more like almost 1,300 miles if I'm doing the math right to get that same 10-degree difference. And we don't have to go all the way down to the equator because they're going to say there's a bulge and that's the difference. That makes no sense anyway. But you can see north of the equator where the bulge isn't. You're going to see when you do the math, like I said, it's a cosine. And guess what? It's all based on the radius of the Earth, r.
Yeah.
Of course.
But why do the longitude lines shrink as you get to the pole, but none of the latitude lines shrink?
Well, that's a fascinating new mystery. That's pretty obvious.
Yes. So to me, that's where they messed with us. That's the math where they said, okay, we have an issue here because Polaris doesn't move. You know, and if it's a ball, they say, you know, because you're 10 degrees lower on the ball, that's fine. But your distance is different, and the distance shouldn't matter on a ball.
Correct. Yeah,
it should
they're
be the same
definitely covering it up.
So
that's for sure.
The obvious question then is, what's the difference in distance from the equator to the first line to the last line to the pole?
Here's the deal. When you do it like in Google Earth or any of the online calculators, it doesn't matter where you are. From 0 to 1 degree north, it shows the same distance as going from 89 to 90 degrees north. But that's not true. When you do the formula, and even tells you, just Google what is the difference in what's the distance between two longitude lines. It'll tell you that it's 69 miles at the equator and it's 53 miles at 40 degrees north, and that's the only reference I can find. But I did the cosine of the degrees somehow one time, and I got the exact answer. It definitely changes 1 degree, how far it is, 1 degree separation. At 40 north, which is the mid-Atlantic area, pretty much where I'm from, it's 53 miles, 1 degree. So if I walk 53 miles south, Polaris will go down 1 degree from where I'm at. But to get Polaris to go down 1 degree at the equator, make sense?
To get Polaris down at 1 degree at the equator, what?
1 degree at the equator is 69 miles. So you have to walk 1 degree at the equator, or let's say you're 1 degree north, you have to walk 1 degree south to the equator to take it from 1 degree above the horizon to right on the horizon.
Yeah, so basically the claim that 69 miles gives you 1 degree, that's only relevant at the equator, right? It's not relevant
That's
at the
correct.
North Pole.
But everything averages it. No matter what you put in, it'll average that, whatever the number is, the average of the whole globe, so to speak. Even the online calculators, when you put in a latitude and longitude, it'll all spit out the same number. It's 1,244 kilometers between these 2 points. And I picked like 10 degrees or whatever it was. But when you see how they've mapped out the globe, that isn't how they have the latitude, I mean, the longitude lines. They shrink and get very close. In fact, they're almost touching 1 degree. It's hard to even get a 1 degree separation at the pole.
Yeah, that's right. So that makes it a bit of a quandary there, because they always say 69 degrees, 69 miles is 1 degree.
Right.
We've never spotted that it's not. It's only that when you're at the equator, right?
Correct. If that's even correct. It's based on R.
Yeah.
But if you take stellarium, and I think everybody thinks that's accurate as far as finding Polaris, like I'm at the Masonic 33 degree parallel, nothing I can do about it. I take my theodolite and it's 33 degrees above the horizon, give or take, you know? So if I'm in Maryland, it's 40 degrees. Then it's 40 degrees above the horizon. But the distances are different to get it to move 1 degree.
Yeah, so
and that tells me it's a perspective.
Think about it this way. Every time the Globers have come on and said, you know, with my observations and stuff, you need to change it to 69 miles for 1 degree of arc, yeah? And don't use your 8 inch per mile squared. Well, we don't live on the equator. So we should have a different percentage, a different distance in miles where we are in the UK. Is that right?
Yeah, you should. That's correct, for 1 degree difference.
There we go. So I think they need to do some calculations. Come back to us when they know.
Well, isn't that going to diminish the arc there? Because they said 69. You know, 1 degree is so small you can't even tell. So all we're doing now is diminishing the degree. So it's going to be even smaller.
Well, it would be steeper.
Or maybe that is why they brought in the whole pear-shaped concept. Because if the rotation of the heavenly globe surrounding us is going to be slower when you get north, as you move towards the north, then yeah, that would kind of suggest that it's not as round. So maybe it's something like that. Maybe that's why one of the reasons they brought it up, because they knew we were going to find out.
Well, it would just be steeper here. If let's just give it an arbitrary, let's say 55 miles for 1 degree of arc, yeah? Well, that would mean that there should be a steeper curve visible on all our observations where we live, as opposed to at the equator, which will be longer and wider and needs 69 miles to do that same 1 arc of curve.
That's correct. So that 8 inches per 8 inches per mile square is only valid at the equator. The further you get to the poles, it should be even more, maybe 9 inches per mile square. Who knows? Whatever it is.
Cool. This is really good, especially for my observations where I am.
So these are things we need to do. But there is a formula, like I said, it's the cosine of one of the angles will give you the exact answer. I just can't remember how to do it. I'm too screwed up from being up for 24 hours.
Fair enough. You've got a naysayer. So DITRH says, I think Rich is wrong when you east or west Polaris does drop no matter where you are. Doesn't drop.
No,
sorry.
east and west doesn't matter with Polaris. Yeah, I'm talking about you take something like Pollux, all right, which is a star, or Sirius, whatever. wherever that is in the sky, east-west, if you're on the same line, let's say you're on the equator, and let's just say Castor rises right over the equator. So we got no north-south to worry about. And at midnight at UK time, wherever that is on the equator, it's directly overhead. So if we forget Polaris for right now, when you go east or west, no matter where you are on the Earth, and it doesn't have to be directly overhead, wherever it is, if you go 10 degrees east or west, that star will drop or rise 10 degrees depending on what direction you move.
Yes.
Now, Polaris, it's straight north-south. But you know what? It's going to work with any other stars too, as long as it's in your same meridian line, I guess is the word. But Polaris, yeah, it doesn't matter if you go east-west. We're talking just how much above the horizon, period.
All right. I got a question then. If there is a rotation or an angular rotation speed difference at the North Pole compared to the equator regions, does that also count for the, basically the rotation speed of the globe of stars surrounding us, which is aligned on the axis of the Southern Cross and the North Pole star? Does that also, does the rotation increase or decrease in speed as you move east and west in the northern regions compared to the equator? Is there also a differential there?
Is that really you, Death? Hold on one sec. Is that you, Death?
Can I answer a question back with a question? Would everybody agree that if, let's just say we had a flat plane wherever we were, and no mountains or obstacles, would everybody agree that we can see the same amount of sky no matter where we are on the globe? Equator, UK, in between? If we have unobstructed east-west, let's put it that way, on a plane, we would all see the same amount of sky, correct? Everybody agree with that?
Not so sure about that. Gotta be honest.
No?
Maybe not. I would say.
Why would you have more or less of a view depending on your longitude?
Atmosphere. Nothing more.
Atmosphere.
Okay. Whatever. It's close enough, okay? What do you mean atmosphere?
On a flat plane, you could technically see infinitely far if there is no atmospheric obstruction that will eventually block out your view.
You're going to have a vanishing point unless you... Well,
yes, eyes are not
whatever.
infinitive in their abilities.
Let's do it this way.
Fair enough.
Let's say you go 10 degrees off the horizon, east and west, on a flat area that's 200 miles east and west of you is flat, and you're only looking 10 degrees north. So you got this view like this. Would we all agree it's the same amount of sky? Give or take a little bit for atmosphere?
For the sake of this example, I'm just going to say yes.
Okay. So if you're at the equator, in that same distance, a star that rises and just gets over that 10-degree east to go to the west, you're turning at 1,000 miles per hour. That star's got to move at 1,000 miles per hour across the sky. But if you're in the UK and it's only 250 miles per hour, that star's moving much slower to go through the same period of time.
What?
Because your rotation is slower.
I kind of understand. I'm trying to conceptualize it, and I'm kind of following along. Can you say it all
You can even do this. You can even do it with sun speed. The sun should move across your sky faster at the equator than in the UK.
Just repeat the sun is not in a fixed position on a globe of stars.
Well, let's say stars.
Sorry, Rich. Can you just repeat it one more time, just so I'm trying to conceptualize it, and it's just proving difficult.
So let's just use flat, and if you want to go up 10 degrees or 20 degrees, whatever, for field of view, I'll start with flat, and then you can conceptualize it up if you think there's obstacles or whatever. But you have a flat plane. You're in Kansas, for example, or the
You're breaking up again.
See horizon and horizon. You can see the sun rise in the east. You can see it set in the west with no obstructions. Now forget the sun. Let's go back to the stars. If a star rises in the east at 6 p.m. and sets in the west at 6 a.m., at the equator, that's it took 12 hours to go the same distance as it does in the UK, but the rotation speed is different. At the equator, it's supposedly 1,000 miles per hour. So that, given this, each place has the same pretty much field of view east-west that we're talking about. The stars should have to move across the sky faster at the equator than they do in the UK because the rotation speed is faster at the equator.
What?
No, he's right. I get it.
I follow you now. It's how I thought you meant it, and when you've repeated it, I do. Yeah, I can go with that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
No, but that's not what we see. No matter where we are, we see the stars.
I totally get that, Rich. I totally get that the concept of the globe Earth and how it should be presented, now I've conceptualized it with that description, is absolutely not what we see. I get that fully. I'm glad you've highlighted that. But yeah, you know, the concept of what it should be doing based on you moving further down the equator and increasing your speed, or the edge velocity of Earth's speed, and your relative position to the stars, you should see a difference.
Absolutely. Should be a big difference, 250 to 1,000.
Huge difference, yeah. You're right.
So,
excellent.
Keeping that in mind, let's go back to what was just brought up about different speeds at different latitudes or whatever. But anyway, that was my answer to it.
Good stuff.
The star should be rotating at exactly the same speed. You just have a different angle of approach. If you're more to the north, at the northern pole star, which doesn't really rotate, it just stays in a fixed location. Although if you move more further north, the entire globe of stars will rotate with you. But the angular speed of all these stars on that globe, they are fixed in a fixed position in relation to each other. And their rotational speed is absolutely constant everywhere, unless there is a specific phenomena that makes the entire thing rotate less fast. And hey, if you're saying that the entire thing rotates the axis, the North Pole star position and the Southern Cross position, that type of rotation changes differently to the north than compared to the equatorial regions, then who knows? Maybe indeed the spin speed of the entire globe of stars also increases or decreases somehow in relation to the position of the Earth. I don't know. But overall, it should all be spinning at a constant rotational angle speed, the whole thing, each star.
I've been keeping an eye on that, and I can't see any, superb debunkings or rebuttals to what you're saying. No one's really addressed it at all, actually. A couple of there's a guy named Chris, somebody who actually brought this up. It was brilliant. His argument was if the sun is fixed in space and we turn, and that's what causes the sunrise and sunset. The sun's speed going across the sky at the equator should be 1,080 miles per hour. In the UK, should be 250 miles per hour, roughly, whatever the numbers are. And he's absolutely correct because everybody has the same field of view, more or less. Whenever you do see the sun pop up in the sky, you should see it move faster in the UK than you do at the equator.
They do say to us that the sun should speed up.
The other way.
And they do say to us that the sun should speed up on a flat Earth. If it goes from the outer edges, how does it make it to the inner circle? But we're saying the same thing. You're saying that it should speed up, it should slow down. But
if it's a spinning ball.
Yeah, but I'm saying they say the same thing on a flat Earth. They say, well, it should speed up and it should slow down. In order to get.
Well, that's the standard model. I don't think we see the sun directly, and I think it goes pretty much in a straight line, and we see a parabolic reflection of it.
Hey, Rich, this is David. Can I? I'm just thinking about this for the first time. So can I challenge you on this? I have a different way of seeing it.
Okay.
You hear me? Okay. So if we're let's say you're in northern Alaska and you're moving 400 miles an hour, whatever it is, or 500 miles an hour, you're thinking the star should move half as slow. But if you have a star that's in the north, at your latitude, so it's going to rise at your midpoint and set at your midpoint, your rotational speed is still going to be 12 hours for that star to appear on the horizon. You have nothing obfuscating it, and 12 hours to set on the other side. even though somebody at the same time on the equator is seeing a star that rises at their middle point, that star is moving faster, but it's still taking 12 hours to go from rise to set. I don't think you would see on a spinning ball stars going at different speeds. Although they are, it's still the same amount of time for them to go from horizon to horizon. That's how I see it.
Well, see, I brought this up a long time ago, like you're saying right now, that it's really one rotation per day, not miles per hour. Oh my God, the globe Earth people just slammed it. No, miles per hour is what matters. So, I mean, I've argued this point both ways.
I mean, you can model it. I mean, take a globe and and put stars. To me, it takes the same amount of time. Now, again, as you said a minute ago, you don't believe we see the actual sun. I don't believe we see the actual stars. I think it's all the same, and we're all seeing them in our own personal viewing dome, if you will. And then the reason I jumped on was earlier when you were saying, at the equator it's 60 whatever miles in between latitude lines or longitude lines, and then it's less in the north. But when you go east and west, Polaris doesn't move. But no matter where you are, if you go north or south, Polaris will rise or set the same amount per same amount of miles. It doesn't matter if you're in Alaska or the equator or Chile. I mean, you can't see it in Chile. It's going the same amount. It doesn't matter if you cross a longitude line. It matters the number of miles because we're on this crazy ball.
Well, then that means it's not a ball then, because...
I'm with you. It's not a ball. I'm just saying the argument from the globe Earth side is that if you move, if I go north, no matter where I am, 10 degrees, that star is going to rise. North Star is going to rise 10 degrees. And if let's pick a star that's at my zenith, or on my latitude, and I'm going to go west towards it, and time is frozen. It doesn't matter if the distance between my longitude lines is 10 miles or 70 miles. If I go 10 miles, or 10 degrees, I may cross a latitude line in one place and not in another, a longitude line in one place and not in the other. But that star that I see is going to rise or drop the same amount of space, the same amount of degrees.
Well, the difference is when you go east-west, it's always the same distance to go 10 degrees. North-south, it's a difference.
Really?
So,
well,
are you sure about that? I asked you before.
So wait, hold on. Let me address that because that's something I've been working on making a video on. Is you can't point north or south or east or west. You can't, because when you point east or west, you're pointing south. Because east and west are circles on a ball and on a flat Earth. You draw that line long enough, it's south, a straight line. So you can't really go east or west without turning. And that's how they get you on this. It's confusing that way. But, if you go straight, you're now no longer going east or west. So that it's hard to wrap your mind around. I'm going to try to put
I get it. I get it. But the calculation that I'm using uses the Great Circle as the most direct line. So they've compensated for that.
Okay.
I think with you talking, I think there's an easier way to explain this. And it doesn't have to be Polaris. So if you freeze time, any star that's above the horizon, let's just say east-west, if you move 1,000 miles east or 1,000 miles west, let's just say for round numbers, it changes 10 degrees in the sky. But if you go north-south with that same star, you're frozen in time.
Right, Rich, but
the same distance, the same distance will not change at the same degrees unless you're near the equator.
The problem is, imagine yourself that you're 10 miles from the North Pole, and you want to go east or west. That you're making a tight little circle there. You can't compare a longitudinal move to a latitudinal move because they're not the same thing. If you want to compare it on a ball that's frozen in time, you have to make them both great circle lines because all the longitudinal lines are great circles and only one of the latitude lines is a great circle. So
well, that's why
you can't compare the two.
Well, that's why I'm using Polaris north-south. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
what the
Right.
deal
Well,
is. Then it's fixed.
Polaris north-south, no matter where you are, whatever amount of degrees you move, the Polaris will drop or rise the same amount, no matter where you are.
Absolutely.
And that's
But
due to perspective, but it works on a ball earth too.
But the same perspective should work east-west on a ball, and it doesn't. They're not equal.
Well, I you know what, I have to think about it more. I like where you're going with it. I just don't know if I agree yet. So
Okay.
you've looked into it longer than I have. I'll think about it more.
Yeah, nobody has to agree. I'm on here just to get input.
I'm arguing.
No,
just so there we go.
I appreciate it. Any what do you want to call it? Devil's advocate argument. That's good. That's how we work through stuff. I appreciate it.
Just remember, everyone's got to remember that east and west are not directions that you can point. If you point east or west, you're pointing south, right? That's a hard one to wrap your mind around. But take a globe and look at it. The only time you can point east or west on a globe is on the equator. But that's you're imagining a ball and it's not real. But just try it from any of the northern latitudes. You're pointing south.
Right, and if you were in the south, you'd be pointing north. If you're pointing east or west.
That's also a straw man argument because it's not true.
Well, I'm just saying, but using what you're
right.
saying.
You're right.
I just want to make sure
I would say that. Right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I got the
that on a
concept
ball.
of what you're saying.
Right. On a ball in the southern latitudes, that you would have to, when trying to go east or west, you'd have to correct to the south. We already know, we have testimony from ship's captains in the north that they have to correct to the north all the time when they're trying to go dead wreck in 90 or 270. I don't know if it's been documented in the outer southern hemiplane that they have to correct to the north, because that correction would be a lot less, maybe even unnoticeable at some points because of currents and whatnot. But, the ballers would say you have to correct to the south, but that's a straw man because it's never been proven.
Well, I can tell you from being in the Navy and plotting our ship's position, we always used a modified Mercator projection, and we never had to correct anything. It was always dead. If we wanted to go due west, we had a 270 the whole time.
Of course, you're going to go 270, but you're going to have to slowly keep inching towards the north to maintain that heading. And that's true on a ball earth. Well, that's not true. Then you don't live on a ball earth or a flat earth, because you would have to on both. What I'm saying is that circle, I can drive down a highway and in a period of 10 miles make a complete circle and not even notice it, because that circle is so slight at 10 miles. Now make it the size of the earth. You're not going to notice the micro adjustments that you have to make to maintain that heading. And during that, you also might make a correction to the south because you overcorrected to the right. So all of the back and forth that you have with that steering wheel are slightly going to the north. And that's an unarguable fact, because it's the same on a ball earth or a flat earth.
Well, assuming a round flat earth, yes.
Okay, unless we live on a straight flat earth, but I don't buy into that. But you have a point there. So flat earth and a ball earth, you have to correct to the north, and on a straight Pac-Man earth, you don't.
So that basically supports Pac-Man then.
You mean no, it doesn't have a loop. No, what it?
Rich,
no, if
I'm just saying that you were in the Navy, and you drove these ships. You have to admit that you wouldn't know if you were making minor corrections to the north. You wouldn't know. You have
your
no way
gyroscope
of
should
knowing.
tell you that, though, right?
There's another way. I mean,
gyroscope.
we would go whatever it is, 2,500, 3,000 miles, whatever it is, from Gibraltar to the Norfolk, trying to beat a record, and it was a straight line all the way across. No little circles, no little arc.
What longitude is that?
I want to say in the mid-30s at Norfolk to, I don't know what it is at Gibraltar, 42. I don't know.
Yeah. So,
actually, they're pretty close.
Are you saying? Yeah. So, but the thing is, I don't think a human can recognize it. It's like the angular resolution of your eyes. Well, it's the angular resolution of a turn that your body has the ability to conceive or perceive. I don't think that I can't perceive a loop at 10 miles when I'm in a car. Okay. So now we're talking, 20,000 miles. You cannot perceive the corrections that you would have to make on a flat Earth.
Yeah, that might be true, but like I said, without it's not the corrections I'm worried about. It's because you need to correct anyway if you have a swell that's crossing you.
Of course, that's what I'm saying.
But the line, a 3,000-mile ruler straight line, is my proof that we didn't do any circle routes.
Where's this ruler line on a map?
Yes, when we plotted our weather charts, we had 12 hours history minimum on each chart, and then we had a smaller projection where we plotted the whole thing.
You're talking about on a map. I mean, that's on a map. I can chart a straight line on a map. That's a curve.
On a Mercator projection?
Yeah, I mean, you're charting it on a map versus real life. There's many reports of ship captains that say they have to correct to the north, but again, it's really difficult to perceive. I mean, if you currents, wind, waves, everything, you're going back and forth. And when you're driving on the road, your wheels going left, right, even though the road is pretty straight, but the slightest curve, you wouldn't notice it out in sea. You can't notice it.
You would if you would have a very stable gyroscope that's spinning all the way. Then you would.
Just a normal gyroscope would show you that.
Nah, but it would have to be a pretty stable one, and I think that modern ship gyroscopes have exactly that type of system just for this occasion, so you don't get lost, basically.
Well, let me tell you what we use. We use the system we use today.
Of angle changes of the ship will accumulate in the gyroscope because it is perfect.
And Arwen, so you were saying that we're not making circles and that the world is flat and straight.
I'm saying if. I don't know. Could be. Right. I think that the rectangular looping concept is pretty interesting and viable still. But
has anybody here analyzed a lengthy ship run's gyroscope for that turn personally?
But there would be evidence if there was a gyroscope that showed that, because that would show the curve of the Earth, right?
Well, it would show the turning of the boat, not necessarily the curve of the Earth. You'd have to have a gyroscope that's measuring not the level, but the sideways. You'd have to spin a gyro vertically, because otherwise you wouldn't notice it.
Yeah, but the same.
And I don't know anyone that's ever done that.
No, but you can say the same for a plane, and there's no plane journey that's ever showed any curvature of the Earth in the gyroscope. So why would it be any different for a boat?
Exactly.
Right. But we're talking about the curvature of the Earth. We're not talking about a plane going over the curvature. We're talking about a flat Earth where a ship is going and claiming that it's not correcting to the north when it has no way of knowing that, other than a sideways spinning gyroscope that's spun up the whole time, that's extremely accurate, that somebody's measuring. And I don't know anyone that's ever done that on this side of the table.
But would you not agree that the absence of the evidence to the contrary would also be a problem? Because if the Earth was spherical, then there would be evidence of it every single day in a plane. So that evidence doesn't exist. Is that not?
I agree.
Evidence?
Sure thing. But that doesn't rule out now it sounds like we're arguing circle map versus straight map on a flat Earth, and I'm saying that the human the ability to detect the angle change at that of a turn like that on a ship especially is not possible, and the only device that I know of that may be able to do it is a gyro that's spun up at 90 degrees, and I don't know if anyone's ever done that. I'm pretty sure no one's done it here. So making the statement that saying I've driven ships and I know we went in a straight line is a preconceived conclusion without enough information. Love you, Rich, but that's how I see it.
To prove that it's not straight, you would need evidence to the contrary, right? And there is no evidence to the contrary. The evidence is that it's straight.
No. There's lots of evidence where Mark Sargent interviewed a bunch of guys that say they're driving cargo ships or Navy ships, and they constantly have to correct to the north. And when going in the other direction, they still have to correct to the north. And they're told to don't worry about it, it's fine. You know,
and what was the evidence that they were correcting? How was it showing that they were correcting?
They because after a long stretch, that I don't know how many miles it was, they'd have to turn the ship to the right because it kept drifting to the south.
Well, you just said when they were you said it was inconceivable to perceive. So how would you know?
Well, no. Well, I'm saying,
doesn't that have anything to do with the magnetic position?
I'll explain
declination.
it. If you're driving a ship and keeping it dead on, great. But let's say I don't know. Maybe these are guys that let the ship go for 2, 3, 4, or 5 hours at a faster speed and aren't really checking because they're deadlocked on. They have it set and there's no autopilot. Then you would notice it. So I don't know. If you held the steering wheel perfectly straight and let it go, you would drift to the south, is what these guys are saying.
But on the very weird.
But equally in opposition, you said before that you wouldn't perceive it. So how would you know that you were drifting south if previously you said you couldn't perceive it?
So what I'm saying is, if you are actively driving the ship the whole time, you're going to make micro corrections rather than if you have it on locked with a straight rudder. Then after time, it'll be a big enough turn where you'll see that your compass heading's off. But if you're looking at a compass and just keeping that compass heading the whole time, every 5 or 10 minutes looking at the compass, you won't even notice. You won't even notice it.
Okay, so you're relating it to the compass, then?
Well,
because there is the declination thing.
If you're driving by a compass, steering the whole time, you barely will notice it. If you're locking your rudder at straight and not paying attention to the compass and not looking at GPS and give it enough time, you'll see the correction. That's what these guys are saying. It's not me saying it. It's not first-hand information. It's second-hand information.
All right. Yeah, but that could work perfectly fine because we have looked at the magnetic map, basically the magnetic field intensity, and there are several pole points. So there already needs to be declination correction.
Absolutely, Arwen. There's all sorts of stuff, but what I'm saying is you can't say that you went in a straight line with it and there's not enough information to say that. You can draw a straight line on a map.
Could be either.
Get from point A to point B. But you don't necessarily go in a straight line. And if you maintained a heading of east or west and you believe you live on a ball or a circular flat Earth, then you did turn. If you believe that the Earth could be straight, that's a whole other story.
But hang on, it can't be argued against that either, because there are such things as tides and winds that would knock you off course, even if your rudder was straight.
Correct, but these guys are saying when they're going east or west, they never drift to the south. They never drift to the north. They always have to correct to the north.
So then we need evidence of the corrections, right?
Yeah, and how do you get that? You go on a ship and film a guy 24/7, watch the compass, watch the. How do you get that evidence?
So how is that any different to Rich perceiving that he always travelled straight when these guys are always saying that they never travelled straight?
What I'm saying, all I'm saying is, I'm not denying. I'm not saying Rich is. I'm just saying that the conclusion that he went straight is a foregone conclusion. It's not based on enough evidence.
But the other guys have got the foregone conclusion too, right?
Hold on.
Those guys did have to make corrections. Go ahead.
Allegedly.
No, I'm with you. I hear you. It
goes both ways.
None of it. Yeah, it goes both ways. None of it is proof. None of it.
But if I can interject for just one moment. Look, if you're going to follow the compass, a magnetic compass, then you have to, there's all kinds of issues with that, mainly magnetic locations. There are several of them at the northern regions, while the only truly reliable or the more stable, reliable way of orientation is the longitude and latitudes, that grid, which is purely based off the angular locations of the heavenly bodies. And that's a very different orientation mechanism. So if you're going to follow the compass, then yeah, you will have to adjust for the declinations and everything.
Right.
But it's a very different way of orienting yourself.
Right. You know what? I don't know what method they use, but the gist of the story was that they locked themselves at 90 degrees, whether they use GPS stars, one of those, whatever that device is that looks at the stars, or compass, and then when they come back and look at it later, they've drifted south. That's it.
Sextant.
That's all I know, and that's not solid evidence, but it is a hint in the direction of a circle. But whether it's a ball or a flat Earth, this is a fact.
But David,
the only thing that you can say is that the Earth is flat and straight.
David, the evidence that you relied on is no stronger or weaker than Rich's evidence saying that he felt that they went in a straight line.
You know what? I agree. I totally agree. So what I'm saying is both of them are not solid conclusions. They're opinions.
Sure.
Well, let me just interject this. Let's just say we had a strong enough laser to go from Gibraltar to Norfolk, Virginia, and the ship decided to follow that line. It would get to Norfolk, Virginia. It wouldn't make any curve because the laser won't make any curve either, if that makes sense.
Has it been done?
By the way, we used what they call GPS. We triangulated off whatever.
But again, how far is that distance, Rich? With this?
Hey, up to 2,500, 2,800 miles, something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So again, it's a straw man argument because we can't do it.
No, you just have to. I mean, that's what I observed, and that's what I report. I'm not saying it's proof, but to me, it's when we were trying to break a record or we were trying to get to a war zone as fast as possible, we never took any great circle route. That's for sure. We went a dead straight line. Whether they micro-correct it or not, I don't know.
Yeah, no. A dead straight line from point to point is the way you want to go. I'm just saying east and west is not a dead straight line. If you maintain a heading of 90 or 270, it's a circle. On a ball or a flat Earth.
Yeah, thanks for filling up the panel.
Okie dokie.
All right. Hey, Rich, not arguing with you, man. Just having a discussion. All right?
Yeah, no issues. No worries.
Yeah, there's no beef here. Yeah.
I love this type of discussion. This is what I want to talk about.
Definitely.
Disk versus a looping rectangle. And there's a lot of things we could do. What I would suggest mostly to really figure out the shape is see what the land measurements are. What are the distances at the north when you go along to the east and the west? What are the distances? And could you then indeed, with this gyroscope system, this sideway gyroscope system, as you call it, David, and I, by the way, think that ships actually do use that, exactly that, because they don't have to just they don't use gyroscopes just to stay level. They really use it to orientate themselves completely in all directions. So I think they already kind of have it. I would have to look into it to confirm if that is the case. But yeah, land or sea bottom survey and actually get the distances and measure them all out, map them all out very precisely. And then, you could see what is the entire land layout. How much room is there in the north side? Is it small enough to fill inside of a disk, or is it really big and could it never fit in there? And the same goes for the southern regions. How would that fit? Is it a very vast area, or is it just as big as the northern regions? And that only that way you could truly figure out the total land surface layout and then draw a conclusion. What type of shape is it really? So it's,
Could I ask?
It will take some work.
Could I ask what's the stronger evidence, Rich or David? If David makes the point before that these guys said that they were always correcting when it was heading one direction and then correcting the opposite way when they were heading in the other way, how strong is that evidence in relation to the gyroscopes that don't show any adjustments in terms of planes flying around curves, boats floating around the Earth? None of them appear to show any circularity, be it globe or flat and spherical. Or flat and circular. What's the stronger evidence? Is gyroscopes not showing any globe stronger than the people that did the job saying that, well, we were always adjusting or we were never adjusting?
But I think that airplane gyros are a far more strong argument because it's happening every day. It happens at faster speeds, and they never show it. So that is, to me, rock solid evidence. But that's just my opinion.
I agree. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I think gyro in a plane is very good evidence because, like he said, they cover so much area in such a short time that, I mean, I'm going to be keeping track. Now, not so much going east. When I come back west from Chicago or southwest, we're going to be not wanting to get into the jet stream. Then they tend to try to get into the jet stream when you go from west to east, which will force a curve because the jet streams curve, and because they want that push. But coming back, they avoid it. So I'm going to be doing that to see if we do any little micro changes or whatever left and right.
What do you think about the evidence that the jet stream is outrunning the Earth's spin by hundreds of miles an hour?
Oh, it absolutely is.
Don't you think that's pretty much? Yeah. That right there, people just don't even believe that's the case.
Well, all you have to do is ask why they try to fly into the jet stream. It pushes them faster east. So if the Earth is moving, it's moving at whatever it is. Let's say 800 miles per hour plus. Let's say you've got a 250 mile per hour jet stream. So that's 1,050 miles per hour that would have to be moving to go east to even keep up with the Earth.
You'd have to also add the altitude of that jet stream, which has to go even faster just to keep up with the Earth. So it's even faster.
Absolutely.
Than that.
Absolutely. Because the radius is higher.
Yep.
Have you seen the microwave data transmission experiment that FE Core in the middle of conducting?
Yes, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Same thing as radar.
Yeah, how far that's supposed to be able to go. It's like, well, no curvature is considered, right?
Absolutely. Well, you know what I got out of that too?
Good.
Oh, I was just going to say what I got out of that also was all the different things when I was in the Navy that I never even gave it a second thought because you're so brainwashed. Like seeing a ship on the horizon at 60 miles, not visually, but on radar. The going in a straight line why would they give us a Mercator projection if it's round? If it's a globe, that makes no sense. Several things just make no sense when I was in there, but now they do. But that's what it reminds me of. The guy said he was a guy that always installed this, I guess for a cable company or whatever it was, some communications company. And I don't know if he directly said it, but he kind of infers that he never even gave it a second thought that, hey, he was connecting these things way too long if it was a ball, way too far away.
The problem with the microwave test, if you understand how the microwave works and everything, it's rock solid proof. The problem is most of the ballers, the world doesn't understand it, can't see it, and won't think about it. Jared has come up with a test. Have you guys heard about this? His line test on the water?
No.
Have any of you heard about it? So
that sounds good.
He's got it's like fishing line, but it's I forget what it is, and he's getting a 3-mile piece of it or 5 miles, whatever the number is, and it's getting winches, and it's neutrally buoyant, so it just floats on the surface, without any real buoyancy, and you're gonna pull it tight right over or right at the surface of the water, crank it tight over 3 miles. If the Earth is curved, that line should be pulled underwater in the middle, and
Absolutely.
We all know that it's not.
Ooh,
so that is something that's the line is going to cost about $3,000 to get it in one piece. And you were looking at, electronic cranks, and we just need a hand crank, a $90 hand crank on each side, and then you can film the entire length with a drone, with a rowboat. If you do it on a canal, which he plans on doing it on, you don't have to worry about wind and waves. What argument can the ballers come up with to argue that when we see that the line is just hovering on the water the whole time, or even do it an inch below the water?
Gravity.
We can also do it above the water.
No, gravity
but it will
wouldn't work.
sag at 3. It'll sag at 6 inches at 3 miles, but the hump would be 18 inches, I believe.
Nah, the gravity will pull
At
the
3
line
miles, sorry.
equally and make it balance on the water. Trust me, it'll all work out perfectly.
So what you're saying is the water will sit on the surface of the water following the curve of the Earth, but when the line's pulled taut, it would drop through the water by the required amount, showing the bulge, and you could measure it in the middle, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
That's genius. I love that.
Yeah.
Unless
good.
he snaps the wire.
Well, that's what we're looking into. It's I forget how many hundreds of pound test it is, or it can handle a certain amount of tension. The guy that distributes the line, he knows how tight you can pull it and how much it will sag at certain distances. So we're calculating all of that in there. But that's why we have that's why he came up with the neutrally buoyant line and literally doing it on the surface of the water. That way, even if it did float, if we did it like a quarter of an inch under the water, and it floated, that would be in the ball's favor. But it's not going to. It's going to just stay. It's going to go straight, and it's going to stay consistent. If you do it on the surface of the water, it's going to kiss the water all the way across. If you do it 2 inches under, it's going to stay 2 inches under. If you do it 6 inches over, it's going to sag down and touch the water in the middle. But it's still not enough sag. It's just like when a baller says, "Oh, look, bottom quarter of that building's gone," when the top should be 200 feet below the curve. It's not curvature. It's something else.
Not to rain on a parade, but there is a searchlight. It has a beam that can be seen 7.5 miles away, and it's under $2,000. Wouldn't it be easier to do like even a 6-mile test with a 7.5 mile searchlight?
Well,
the problem is the argument can be refraction. All of these arguments that they give us, they're always arguing that if the refraction, whatever it is, I don't know how a physical line pulled tight across the top of a flat standing body of water can be argued on either side.
Yeah,
because it's already being argued, even without a line on the water. It's already being argued.
How?
There's so many parameters and things that can go wrong with the line being pulled taut, Every chain has a weak point. What if it has a frailty somewhere? Then you got to stretch it. Well, there you go. What if $3,000 worth of what ifs? Anyway,
well,
not
that's
my
why
business.
we're gonna over purchase the strength of the line, so we can crank it tight, and then we can document that it is tight. And the way to document that is to raise it up above the water.
Maybe what he said is good. Maybe a chain.
No, neutrally buoyant.
Is that going to be a trout line?
Well, because it would sit on the surface, it would follow the contour of the Earth, right? If it were a ball. But when you pull the line taut, it would force the line to go under the water by a set amount, which you could measure and observe and repeat. It's a brilliant idea. I can't think of any explanation for why it wouldn't be a good idea.
Yeah,
when you pull it tight, are you going to be right on the surface of the water?
No, you'd have to be in the middle point, wouldn't you?
We're gonna do it we're gonna try to do it. I say we. Jaren's doing this. He's in California and I'm on the East Coast. So we're gonna do it right at the surface of the water. We're gonna try to do it an inch below the water, and we'll try to do it 6 inches above the water. So all three of them will confirm the same thing. I'm thinking that the one literally kissing the water would be the best, or you literally like a quarter of an inch under the water, so it's extremely visible. We're trying to get a fluorescent, opaque line, so you can see that it's a quarter of an inch under the water, and you can see that it's tight. The only thing that we really have to prove is that it's tight. But the fact that it's neutrally buoyant is a good thing because it won't skew in on either side of the argument.
Well, Ding Ding Knockout, Dallas, Texas David, he's been talking about fishing lines for a long time, and you guys are witness to this. He's been laughed at all the time, and look, he's coming back now. How about that?
Well, you know what? No one's stealing anything from anybody. We're all laughed at for everything. Whatever works, works. It doesn't matter where the idea came from. It matters that somebody's going to try to implement it, and anybody that wants to help is going to be welcome to, because once we get all the details worked out, we're going to put up a GoFundMe, and you're all welcome to contribute.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. Because it would be observable, repeatable, verifiable. Nobody would be able to argue with it. The biggest problem he's going to have is calculating what would be the required force to pull it taut enough, but without snapping it. Because if he snapped it, he's messed it up, hasn't
he? Yeah, that's for sure.
How could you control the variable of the undulation of the water?
The minute you pull it taut, that wouldn't matter, would it?
Yeah, but if the boats are moving, he's going to
do it in the canal, right? Little canal.
In that canal where he did his laser thing. Yeah, that would be a good place to do it.
All right. I dropped out. I didn't hear that part.
He's going to do it in a canal, standing water.
How do you visualize the line over 3 miles to confirm that it's true and straight? Optics, eyes, and other stuff. There's no single spot where you could.
It wouldn't matter.
Confirm or.
Doesn't matter. It's a ball everywhere, and as long as it's resting on the water, right? It's then subject to gravity if we're on a ball, and it's just curving around the Earth as you would expect the water to do on a curved Earth. But then when you crank each end, that tangent that you've got between you and target is then actualized with the line. So you see basically the line is tight and it forms that. Anthony, let's just show this visually. Can you get the Metabunk calculator up with the diagram of the...
Couldn't a glober just say, well, the force of gravity is pulling evenly on that neutrally buoyant thing, and the water buoyancy is pushing up on it at the same time, giving the curve anyway without being able to see it?
No.
Even though...
No, that was I said that as a joke. I mean, yeah, that could be an argument, but that's exactly what I said as a joke, because no, you can't, you know, here we go. So...
I know, the principle is sound. Everything in this is sound.
Sure, I'll just explain it for the audience's benefit. So, what we're essentially saying is...
I don't understand the visualization to confirm it.
Sure, but I'm just for the audience's benefit. So, you lay out the line, if you can just keep it still for just 1 second, Anthony. So, you lay out your fishing line, and it's bobbing on this, if this bulge here is water on a sphere Earth. So, it's laying on this floating. And then at this end, and this end you start cranking... it will dip down to create this line. And you will see it dip below the surface and become taut, developing this, the bulge, above it, in water.
So technically, if there was a little marker in the very middle, as it was being pulled, and if it was a ball submerged, at a certain point, that little marker float in the middle would be submerged.
Correct. So you could have, like, if it had like a ribbon, with a tape measure attached to the center point, you know, it's just going to be floating out there, you know, however it's floating when it's all bobbing on the water. But when you crank it, yes, the bottom of that would be pulled down, and you would see on the top of that measure, when you pulled it up in the middle, how much it had actually been pulled taut. So you could see the depth of the bulge.
And it'd have to conform at 3 miles to the inches, right?
Oh,
I think that's I can't see any reason why that wouldn't work. That would be a great proof.
A great proof for globe, yeah. Yeah, if you cranked it and it started dipping and it went down, and you could pull it up and get a measurement of how much between the bottom of that taut line and the top of the bulge is, then you would have a measure of the bulge at that distance. So yeah, I think it is genius.
So if you did it over 3 miles, the view height would be 0, wouldn't it? The bulge would be 1.5 feet. So what would happen is that the twine would drop below the surface of the water by a measurable 1.5 feet.
Yep. There you go.
I think that's excellent.
Exactly.
Yeah, there couldn't be much doubt, especially if the measurement in the middle was accurate and it went to the exact depth that it was, quote, supposed to.
Right, so what we need to do then is put it really back into the baller's court and say, right, if this is what we're going to do you guys accept that if this drops by 1.5 feet, which would be measurable, it would be observable, if it drops by 1.5 feet, will you guys accept it? Because I don't see, you've got to put their position before he does the experiment. If they won't accept it, then that means they're going to be fundamentally dishonest, right? I don't see how there's any honest argument for them to accept this or to not accept this.
Well,
even on a calm day, accounting for a ripple here and there's really no waves or anything on a canal. So it's
just so it's clear for the counter argument. So what we would say is, so if you can now scroll your page down so we can just see surface level, Anthony. Just scroll it down till no other way down. Keep going. Stop. That's it. Perfect. Stop. So now we do the same experiment, but we've got the same test with an observer here and an observer here, and then they lay out the exact same fishing line along this straight flat line, and it's bobbing on the water. You crank it at this end, you crank it at this end, and essentially, yes, it goes taut, but it stays in exactly the same place, just taut.
Then they would argue that you didn't pull it hard enough.
Well, you can only tighten it and tighten it and tighten it until it snaps, you know?
And there are strain gauges that can tell you how tight your load is on a wire and stuff.
But he wouldn't need a
little
lot.
gauge wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
The buoyancy of the twine is being held by the water. He wouldn't need much force at all. He wouldn't have to take it to the point of failure.
Yeah, you can tie a spring scale between the two ends and know how tight it is, more or less, you know.
Yeah, that's the complaint. They'll say that he didn't pull it taut enough, so we need to take in a measurement. So go on then. They'll have to tell us the maths then to calculate the torque that would be required to pull the string taut. So you tell us what maths you want, what parameters you want, the weight of the string, what it's made of, and then somebody can come back with the required amount of torque that will be needed to pull the string taut. And then as long as he does that, then that will be okay. So let's put it into their hand. Let's see the maths, and you tell us what strength you want us to pull the string. And if we pull the string that strength and it doesn't do anything, then you guys have got to accept that either you've got your maths wrong or it ain't doing any curve.
Yeah, I mean, I would welcome that in the comments. That's the proposed test. I don't see any flaw with it. If it drops and pulls taut underneath the water, and there's then going to be a bulge, you know, there's no arguing it.
Yeah, I agree.
And if people think string can't be strong, the codfish line, 110 pounds it can lift. So that's like 2 bags.
I don't think there's going to be an issue.
I don't think there should be, because the strong line is strong line. It should hold.
I don't think there'll be an issue with him not pulling the string taut enough. I'm assuming he's doing some kind of plastic or catgut type string that's hard, strong. So in that event, like, he could get away with pulling it pretty taut, because if the water's holding the buoyancy of the string, I mean, how strong does he want to pull it before it doesn't move? I think that's a great test.
I do. I know someone said, oh, it doesn't matter who came up with it, but if that was Jaron, again, he's got a lot of shout-outs over these last 2 shows, but when you're hot, I suppose. So yeah, shout out to Jaron if it was you that came up with that. Superb. Absolutely superb.
So now we need to know, when is it going to happen?
And any criticisms, you know, like I just said, I would welcome any, you know, criticisms of that test, because I think that's a very good test.
The ballers are going to just show you a heavy rope stretched over a certain amount of length, and it's going to be dipping in the middle because of its weight. And they'll say, not proved anything. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, you've got to crank it taut. I mean, that is part of it. You know, it's got to be, you know. I just remember that Simpsons episode where I think one of the criminals gets arrested, maybe Krusty. Or no, the guy with the fag packet underneath his left t-shirt. But he gets arrested, and then his car goes up for auction, and the guy who lives Millhouse's dad buys it, and he's driving away with his arm in the air going, "You forgot to cut my sandwich," and then he drives past this strung out, tautened line, and it chops his arm off. And you can just imagine, you know, someone travelling along the canal, all this is very, very taut, thin wire stretched out, and, you know, somebody loses their legs or something.
We just know what the Globers are going to say, though, that those that are in denial I don't know. I hope it does prove, but I can just hear what they're going to say at the end of it. Well, they're not going to.
Is this the test? Is this what I'm understanding? The top line is the line, the bottom is the water.
And a foot and a half down is a foot and a half
down. If it's flat,
down.
it's straight. Yep.
Are they actually going to put the line in the water or above the water?
Yeah, it'll be in. It'll be
Let's say this will be the line in the top,
hold on,
and it will
Jose,
touch the middle.
Hold on, Jose. Can you start again? Because there was a lot of interruptions, and I've got you on screen now. So if you can just start from, if everyone could just mute while Jose gives his demo.
If I'm understanding well, this will be a scale representation. The top line will be the line, the bottom will be the water level. Like this will be the corner and the middle part. And then let's say if it's curving, will be a scale. The top line will be the fishing line and the bottom will be the water curving. The corner and the middle will be touching, right? If I'm understanding right?
Yeah, if you did it above the water, your depiction would be correct. If they started a foot and a half above the water, you would then expect to, paddle out to the middle of the canal and see that the center point is touching the wire when taut. But conversely, I think it would be probably better to show that it dips under the water. In other words, start from, put your crank on the shore as low as it could possibly be, maybe a few inches above the shore, wherever is the most convenient to anchor it. And then you tighten it and show that the line was taut and underwater.
Good. This is good.
But that could be a criticism if it ended up being done above the water. I think it would be slightly less valid, because then it's contentious. If it goes under that water, you'd expect to go out, maybe a few hundred yards and see it starting to go under the water, and then seeing it getting deeper and deeper and deeper. If necessary, you could tie little tape measures all the way along it, and then you should see if they've all got little floats. You can literally cut them off with little floats on them and see the exact shape of the curve.
Well,
it would be a matter of tension. Yeah.
What else would be possible though is if you kept the string that could then be passed within flat Earth to different parts of the world, and we could all verify it and show that in all over the Earth there is no curve on water.
But also, if it does the underwater test well, and there's a foot and a half underwater, there's nothing that prevents raising it a foot and a half off the water and seeing if it hits an apex.
Yeah, the weight of the string.
Doubling
the tension of the string would stop it, wouldn't it? So if you tauten that string and it's a foot and a half under the water, and you try and fudge that result, and it's got God knows how many pounds of tension in it, you're not going to be able to lift it. You're just going to reach down to it, try and pull it, and either chop your fingers off or not be able to pull it.
Underwater guitar string.
Yeah, exactly. You've got an underwater guitar string, precisely.
So what you could do is you could have an alternative test as well. You could have your main test, which would be, does it create the arc between the bulge? And in the alternative, what you could also test is if you were to drop both ends of the string so that they were both, mind you, they're buoyant, aren't they? It'd have to be relatively neutral. But I was going to say, if you drop both ends by say 6 inches, would it be 6 inches in the middle? But if it's buoyant, then it would just create the arc the opposite way, wouldn't it? So it wouldn't work. It depends on the buoyancy of the string in question.
Yeah, I think he said that it's going to dip 6 inches in the middle anyway.
Say that again, Rich.
He said it was going to dip 6 inches in the middle anyway. That's what he was told.
What do you mean it dips 6 inches in the middle?
I think he said he knows that the weight of the string will cause it to automatically try to dip 6 inches in the middle just from the weight of it.
At 3 miles?
I'm just saying what he said, that's all.
Yeah, because if you don't know the distance of the cord, the dip is kind of like sort of like relative.
They could pull it taut above the water, put a level on it to show that it's level.
What you could do is use fishing weights manufactured by the same people and do 100 of them over 3 miles, and then get a line of sight of all of them. No string, just let them all float.
Too many cooks, I think.
Yeah, let them get on with it and see what results.
A lot of error margin for errors, but it can be planned and done well. Yes, indeed.
Is there room for the Calypso on the canal? Too many cooks.
Room for the what?
The Calypso, Jacques Cousteau's ship.
I don't know.
They may want to get involved in the experiment too. I'm kidding.
But I would think the Globeheads would get right behind this, because they're pretty steadfast that it's sphere-shaped. I'm pretty steadfast that it's flat, so I'm keen because I think I know the result. And they should be the same, right? This would be a conclusive proof either way.
Well, all water and fluids need a container and find level, basically. So it's already, by common sense, a foregone conclusion that
but gravity,
basic surface is flat of the water.
But they've got a concept with a presupposition attached, which is a gravity presupposition. So they think they explain it away before anything's been done. Like we would say, well, fluid dynamics is on our side. They would say, well, gravity is on our side. So, you know, put your money where your mouth is. If you know, let's have some bets on it.
I agree.
Well, the globalists should put out an APB on their R value for the center of the Earth, because with their math formula, it's never in the same place for any mile of measurement. So
chase that R. Chase it.
R is moving.
Chase it.
There's no center of the Earth that their math can justify. Every
I can
calculation
already hear,
on their Earth curve calculator moves R.
I mean, we're on with Iron Realm Media later, and I can already hear Adam ringing in my ears going, well, no, 8 inches per mile is just a concept that they use from the beach for an observer. It's not really radius, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of, I've kind of got to call you on that a little bit, because 8 inches per mile isn't really what they're using.
It's logarithmic, and it is what they're using on those curve calculators.
Granted, but they can argue it the other way, is all I'm saying, just so I don't get a load of comments and you don't get a load of abuse for it.
I got you. But I stand by Earth's core, the R, the actual R in their math is moving every calculation. Every time they add a mile and redo their calculation, their origin, their R, has moved. It has to. So APB on the R value of the center of the Earth. All points bulletin, if you find it.
So we need to know what the view of the ballers is then on this claimed experiment, because I agree with Nathan. They should be completely behind this. Not only behind it, they should be confident in the result, and they should be pushing it. Because if the flat earthers are funding it via a GoFundMe, I don't see why they wouldn't push it.
It's not an experiment. It's going to be a measurement.
A test.
We call it a test. I would personally, I would bracket this.
It can't be an experiment because there's no observed phenomena, right?
Right. Well, what you can call it is a measurement, because if you stretch out this line, get it taut, then you've got something physical that you can stretch up between that line and the top of the bulge to get a measurement of the bulge at that distance. So
a known value.
Yeah, I would call it a measurement, a potential measurement for the bulge. Yeah. Unless there isn't one, and then obviously we'll see what we were expecting, which is that it'll be flat as a pancake. He'll tighten that line, and you know, if it's right on the edge, it'll just stay where it is, just tight. We shall see. Hopefully, it goes ahead. Of all the tests so far, I think this is probably the best one sounding, at least on paper. This sounds absolutely glorious.
Yeah, it's observable, it's repeatable, it's verifiable. Obviously, flat earthers would own the string. We'd have to rent it out to the ball earthers.
And it's not too technically challenging.
No, I don't think so either. I can't see a massive engineering challenge to do this. You know, a couple of anchor points might be slightly challenging, but so what? You know,
an iron rod or two hammered into the ground.
Exactly. It's not that challenging to get an anchor point for a winch. You know, people do it for their cars all day long. So, you know, unless they're needing to exceed a couple of tons of pressure that like a winch would normally do when it's attached to a tree. But like I say, I have absolutely no idea what sort of tension you'll need for a 3-mile piece of whatever you say it is, catgut or whatever. I'd have no idea what they'd be using it. Presumably something synthetic and expensive.
Even if it was a couple $100 pounds, and that's a lot, they can take it. Piano wire goes up to thousands of pounds, so these wires can take it. They can be pulled straight and
yeah, right. Pianos are under stupid tension. You know, they're quite dangerous.
Well, yeah, I think an inch of silk can lift 1,000,000 pounds, so that's not bad. There's tough lines out there.
So there's no technical limitation on this then. I mean, if at first he did not succeed, ultimately speaking, he could up the gauge of whatever it is he's using. You know, it might end up costing $5,000, but theoretically, you know, with an infinite budget, there's no massive technical challenge in terms of tensioning and in terms of, from what it sounds like, I've got absolutely no clue if this is true, but in terms of the actual physical availability of things to be able to do this, you know, and if it wasn't the case, you know, for this purpose, there may be, you know, somebody out there that goes, yeah, I could design something that could do that, no problem. And it would be interesting to see, if nothing else, just fascinating to see an actualization of the sphere Earth bulge. I'd like to see that. You know, I'd jump ship if it did that. What about you guys?
Yeah, but I'm not expecting to see that. I'm expecting to see pretty flat.
I wouldn't jump on one result. I'd need it like 2 or 3 times so that I knew that it was consistent and it was reliable, it was repeatable, observable.
Sure. Okay, well, let me give you a hypothetical. Let me just give you a hypothetical then. So every let's say quarter of a mile, yeah, there's a tape measure with the predicted curve and a little float attached to it, right? And it's just, like I say, that's floating, and then it's perfectly measured out every quarter of a mile for how much you expect to see with a little float and that little amount with a tape marking on it all the way along it to the other side of the 3 miles. So then the person stretches it out, it goes under the water, everyone watches all those floats start bobbing and go, and then you go out and you measure each one of them's taut exactly along the expected, predicted curve of the Earth. If that was the case and somebody went out and repeated it independently of the original tester, at that point I'd be like, it's curved.
I would only agree with that if it was done more than twice. It would have
Sure, I mean, yeah, you'd want it to be repeated, but ultimately I would say at that point there's no other explanation I can fathom for this.
Yeah, fair enough. You know, you could say, well, it's looking that way. You know, if those are the results, you know, it's certainly looking
Hey
that
guys,
way. But...
I appreciate it, but I'm gonna go. I gotta get some sleep before an appointment I have this afternoon.
Cool, man.
Okay.
You have a good afternoon.
Good morning,
Alrighty,
good night,
take
or whatever.
Alrighty. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, we need to give
thanks
the
to
public endorsement for Jaren's experiment. I think that I can't see any reasons why the ballers wouldn't do it either.
And is 3 miles enough?
Yeah, it's a 1.5 in the middle.
It's
Okay,
a ball
so we
everywhere,
need to-
Mark, according to them.
Sorry?
It's a ball everywhere, according to them.
Yeah. It's just we think of the Bedford level, but there's just loads of canals around the UK, isn't there? That we could repeat it as well.
Bless you.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, even if it was 2 miles, there should be 8 inches, you know, under the water in the middle. So you know,
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
the length is irrelevant. The scale is constant no matter where you go.
Well, we're surrounded by canals, aren't we?
It's supposed to be arcing.
Would it be enough for me to jump? It would have to be repeated. If it was subject to repetition and it worked both 3 times, 4 times, I don't see how that could be argued either way. I would jump ship on that. I would say I would jump.
Well, if you're not prepared to jump, then you've got cognitive dissonance, haven't you? You've got to be open and be honest.
Oh,
I just can't see any reason why it wouldn't be accepted by the ballers. And if they didn't accept this before the experiment started, these are the people that are dishonest. I can't see any reason why
we'd be as bad as them.
Either side would not accept it.
We'd be as bad as them. So every time we present something that just gets disregarded out of hand because of a presuppositional belief that they have, we would be just as bad. So we would say, well, we have been saying, where is the curvature? And then someone says, here is the curvature. And you go, there is the curvature. And yes, and in the way that it's dropping and how it matches all of our observations when we reconsider them based on this information, at that point, you go, it's a globe. You've got no other route. And you go, I would have to do that. I'd have to turn around to all my subscribers and go, look at this. It proves we are all wrong. I was wrong. I'd have to do that.
Yeah.
I would share it. I would push everybody in Flat Earth to share it, because then it would prove that it's a psyop, wouldn't it?
Was it the Bedford level experiment became controversial and inconclusive, didn't it?
Because of refraction. But I can't see how anything to do with refraction.
And poor equipment, you know.
Right, why is Jason McCormick saying in chat that the fish line test has been done? What the hell's he talking about?
Oh, someone says it's been done. Who said that?
Jason McCormick in chat.
Can you join and let us know? That'd be wonderful.
Jason McCormick has how many subs? 19 subs, so he's not a shill. He's not a troll.
Well, maybe. But either way, regardless, if he thinks he's got some information that this has been done, I'd love to dig it out and forage it out and have a look at it already.
Yeah,
if nothing
can
else.
we have some evidence for it being done, please?
If you need a room on the panel, I'll bail.
No, there's loads of space.
Okay.
Let's
We'll give this guy a couple of
see what
minutes.
evidence there is for this fish wire.
Yeah, give this guy a couple of minutes and then I'll round out if we don't get anything from him.
He may just respond in text.
That's no good.
Well, if it's been done before, he must have some evidence for it. Otherwise, he wouldn't know it's been done, right?
Did you say it was James Lewis?
Jason McCormack.
Oh, my bad. Well, this is going to be a boring round out to the show, isn't it? We wait for some random guy.
Ryan says, present the evidence after it's been collected. The experiment hasn't been done yet. If others want to deny it, that's up to them. Well, I think it should be collaborated with like representatives from the ball side as well as flat earthers. And I think Jerem would be totally in agreement. He would be open for that. And they would, I mean, how hard is it, right? The way the catgut string is being held by the water. So there's no weight to do. It's just how hard do you want to pull it before it doesn't drop? And that wire would have to drop.
What's expected from flat earthers, from us, is if the test shows there's a curvature and it's repeated and repeated, we must accept, and we got to be honest with ourselves and accept it. Now, the same expectation for the globe believers is not going to happen because they will not accept if it does not show any curve, and that's a fact.
Well, that's it, because you know they want to redefine everything. A flat line or a line is not a line; it's a curve because, and anything that they want, they just add a new definition, a twist, and babble to it, and that's what others who want to believe that noise and nonsense adopt or start reiterating and repeating.
Right.
Jason says. Just want to get sorry before you do. So there's a couple of others that need to be mentioned at least. So if it was taut and basically give or take an inch lying on the water before it was tautened, and then it got tautened and the floats dropped. In other words, you had a taut wire, but the floats that you were expecting to see, with the wire below the water, were actually the wire was still taut above the water, but the floats dangled down. The middle one the most. Then you've got proof of a concave earth. So, there's no reason why concave earthers wouldn't get behind this too. And also, I've got to represent them all. So if you're a dick earther, then it would have to be... No, I'm just joking.
He's claiming that it's on a particular website, The Wild Heretic. But when I've looked on The Wild Heretic, I don't see anything referencing it. We need to have a more accurate citation for where this claim is that it's been done before.
This guy just joined. He's got a YouTube account. He's in the comments. He's got subscribers. Just join. Just tell us. Go on. We're holding out for you.
And even if something's been done, it doesn't prevent, and the idea of science too is confirmation by repeating. So even if someone else did it, it don't really matter. It's who does it, what their biases are, can often influence stuff and results and tests. In science, you validate stuff by repeating experiments and trying to get, in a sense, a repetition of the results. If I claim I get 80% yield in a chemical reaction that normally only gets 60, wow, you can accept it. Or the real validation would be for someone else to take my monograph of how I did it, repeat that process, and if he gets 80% too and another bunch do, then I was actually telling the truth and my procedures and everything were accurate. But that's not the way.
One more time. Sorry, I can't let it slide. This is not an experiment.
No, I know, I understand that, but even as a test,
hang on a sec.
and which is what it is, with a known.
Can we not call it an experiment on the basis that we see there is an observed phenomena? There's a lot of retards going around telling everybody that we live on a sphere.
What's the observed phenomena?
that there's a load of retards going around telling everybody that we live on a sphere.
That could be classed as an observed phenomena.
That is
There's a load of religious zealots who observe them all the time.
Well,
I didn't expect
something
that.
like this has already been done and documented. I mean, then it will be easier for us to repeat it because it will be details on how it was done, what materials was used, where it was done. So it will be easier to redo again.
The observed phenomena is a barge disappearing bottom first as it goes down there.
Yes.
All those naturally observed barges in nature, right?
Yeah, well, to be honest, that's a fair shout. They always claim boats go over the horizon, right? So the phenomena would be boats apparently go over a horizon. That would work. That I can see that being a fair phenomena, because if it's not, the alternative hypothesis will be that it's refraction of some kind of dirty air that we all know causes it, right?
No. The alternative.
It leaves the field of view.
Hold on, I can't let all this slide. I will be crucified in the comments if I let all this slide. So the alternate and the null are the opposite of each other in the respect that if you say something causes something, you know, if A causes B, then in the null you would say if A then not B. In other words, it's saying it won't cause that. Yeah. So it's not an either or choice. It's not like curve or refraction. It's, you know, if curve then obstruction, if curve then not obstruction. You know, you can't formulate. You can't formulate a proper.
Why can you not have the alternative hypothesis being something else is causing it? I.e., it's an optical phenomenon. It's an optical phenomenon rather than a curve of the air.
The two are mirrored. So you have one that is confirming the only presumption in the hypothesis is the presumed cause or the independent variable. Shout out to Joey. Thanks for all the super chats. Much obliged. But you're then mirroring that in the null. So they've got to be the antithesis of each other. In other words, if this, then that. If this, not that. In other words, that's how you have to formulate the alternate and the null. You can't just say if this, then, and then give a different observed phenomena your dependent variable. You can't do that. You know, it is very narrow for a good reason. You know, in terms of the amount of variables you can have and what you are predicting. You know, it's tightly controlled so that if you get a fail, you're essentially confirming the alternate hypothesis. That's what you're trying to do. You're at the end of the experiment, one of the hypotheses will stand, the alternate or the null.
Well,
that's why you formulate it that way.
This has to be considered as a potentially scientifically valid experiment.
Well, I'm happy to carry on now. If you want to try and formulate this into a scientific hypothesis, be my guest.
Yeah. So if Earth curve, catgut drops in the middle.
How are you going to vary Earth curve?
Oh.
Yeah. So maybe I'll round out, and if you want to think about this, you're welcome to. I mean, I'm happy to carry on if you want to keep doing this, but it's a double-edged sword. I'm going to chop your head off with it as much as I am the globe heads in this scenario, I'm afraid, Anthony.
Yeah, but hang on a sec. So,
you really want to do this?
Well, okay, you draw a conclusion from the measurements you get.
You can draw a conclusion from the measurements. However, we are definitely not drawing any scientific conclusions, just making a measurement of something.
Okay. We know you've hammered that point, so we will avoid that.
Yeah, I would. It's just my advice.
Can you draw an accurate conclusion from a measurement?
You can draw an accurate measurement.
And conclude what?
That you've measured it accurately.
Standing water must curve.
Are you not going to conclude curve or straight, Nathan?
Yeah, if there was curve there, you would then be measuring it accurately. But it's got to be there to measure, right? So our understanding, based on everything we have seen, is that water remains flat when at rest. Now, over a canal, how much at rest? Well, probably quite a lot at rest. It's a canal, right? So that's covered. So we say water is flat. That's an oversimplification, but for the sake of rounding out the show soon, water is flat. So when he cranks that crank, it'll demonstrate precisely that. Now, the presupposition of a radius-based Earth Will that play out? I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. But if they tautened that crank and it all dropped down below the water and demonstrated curvature, it would then absolutely get my attention and would require further measurement, you know, to show the same thing, you know. But then the presupposition is no longer a presupposition, is it? You know, you've got something demonstrable, something that you can actually quantify, something that you can actually measure.
So what you're saying is that even though you jump ship, it's still not scientific enough. It doesn't satisfy the scientific method.
No.
Because you can't vary the curvature of the Earth to prove causation.
Well, yeah, but then you could then say what I say. It's obviously and observably a sphere.
Nathan, you're hard work.
I am hard work,
Oh,
but you know,
I agree.
I'm a difficult man to please, but you know, I'm not being difficult because I'm saying, you know, all those flat earthers out there that just want to do. I'll give you a better justification. At the moment, science, in quotations, is men telling other men what's what. Yeah? They've hijacked it, completely hijacked it. So now people say what science says. Well, science is a very specific and narrow thing, proving causation. Well, that is what science can be used for. But if we start saying we're doing an experiment, why are we doing the same as them? Let's not use these terms to make ourselves sound more credible. You know, you can just be honest and say we're just measuring something. You know, we're measuring how flat this water is. And what do you know? It's perfectly flat. And if it wasn't flat, you'd then have to say, okay, well, we were expecting it to be flat. We haven't performed a scientific measurement because it falls outside of science. And you just have to be honest and say that. And if you want to label yourself a pseudoscientist, well, then you're no better than an astrophysicist.
Can it be said it's a non-scientific experiment?
No. Why? Why would you want to why do you want to hijack that word?
I think a test would be just better.
Why not have an
a
experiment?
simple test, you know.
Be
it really is. Either these lines are going to go taut and these things are going to float and be on the surface, or they're going to be pulled down under and be level at the surface.
Absolutely precisely. So with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, you know precisely what to do, but if you liked the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. Also, a massive shout out to all who hit the super chat. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!